A new report out says that the United States can never actually combat global warming without reducing its dependence on plastic. This report comes from the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicines, and it plainly states if we continue to manufacture plastics, the environmental crisis will just get worse and worse. Scientists are now asking Congress to do something about it. Specifically, they're asking for a cap on plastic productions. Lawmakers have not really shown much appetite for doing this. Recently, the infrastructure bill that was passed has $350 million for more recycling, but nothing to actually slow the production down. Now, you might be shocked, I say, to learn that lobbyists for the chemical companies say this report is misleading. We don't need to stop making plastics. What we need to do instead is this idea of advanced recycling, meaning turning plastics into other things, like that lawn furniture you might see that actually is quite nice and lasts forever. We have some of that recycled plastic
where they take
lawn
the
furniture.
old milk bottles and they convert it into Adirondack chairs.
Right.
Yeah.
But really, once those plastics, it takes a lot of greenhouse gas emissions and fossil fuels to make plastics in the first place, right? And if we continue to make plastics, we continue to be hard on the earth. It contributes to air toxins, greenhouse gases. So the report is saying, look, this advanced recycling that we're saying, that is secondary. What we should be doing first is to reduce. Congress has not really shown much appetite for doing this, and it may not be surprising because chemical companies that make plastic have a lot of lobbyists that are expensive and pump a lot of money into your congressional representatives. Now, I will remind you, plastics are not only awful for the earth, and they gather into the Great Plastic Reef as well as harm wildlife. The chemicals from plastics also leach into the environment and harm wildlife, but they also leach into our bodies. So, what can you do? I'm just going to give you a few things. You can reduce plastic in your house. Don't use reusable or single-use items if you can avoid it.
Get a water bottle instead of buying water bottles.
Yes. Use the type of Tupperware, or that's a proper noun, but food storage containers should be glass. Do not put plastic in your dishwasher. It leaches chemicals. And talk to your congressional representative and say you would like a cap on plastic production in the U.S. I could keep going about this. I'll let you talk if you'd like to.
I would like to talk, but I just want to take like sort of a macro level look at this and like why we think that all the plastics are being recycled, and then we're not. According to Greenpeace, no. In fact, only about 9% or 8% of all plastics are actually recycled. And what does that even mean to be recycled, right? There's a big question as to like, I've been hearing this a lot lately. A friend of mine from New Jersey actually was tweeting about this and said, stop using plastics. It is a lie that we're even recycling plastics at all. I thought, So I started doing some research on it. Wouldn't you know it, he's absolutely right. Very little of these plastics are actually being recycled. They're permanently like in our landfills, and they're never going anywhere. And then they're causing cancer, all kinds of other problems. And of course, big oil has gone to great lengths to mislead the public into believing plastic would be recycled. That was R2D2. He agrees with that.
Oh.
So Laura Liebrick, a manager at the Rogue Disposal and Recycling in Southern Oregon, says that when none of this plastic will actually be turned into new plastic things. All of it gets buried. Containers, bags, packaging, strawberry containers, yogurt cups. It gets buried.
I went to a landfill in. I can't remember if it was in Indiana or here, but anyway, I went to the landfill and they had the recycling area and then they had the regular area, and they were literally dumping the recycled stuff out, and it was going out the back. And when I was out there dumping stuff, I looked and all the recycling stuff was out in the same area that I was dumping my stuff.
Isn't it sad? Like we teach our kids in school, like you separate this, put this over here. This is the difference, right? We in our house have 3 different bins for paper, plastic, glass, right?
Well, and you know what it looks like?
You like to think you're doing good by that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like they make you think that, but what does that look like? That looks like all that is so they can make a little bit of profit on another bin.
Right.
Perhaps.
And the bin we have is a plastic bin. Isn't that funny when you think about
Right.
it?
And
Think about
you
that.
know, a lot of the plastic that we put in the plastic recycle so my father is in the recycling business. And I had just a tub of guacamole that I had bought at the store, and I was going to put it in the plastic recycling, and my dad, and it had some residue of guacamole. Like, we did not lick the container. And he was like, they won't recycle that unless you rinse it. But I didn't know that, you
Who
know?
knows
So
that?
I put I don't rinse out all my recyclables, but they cannot recycle food or any food that's still in there. And what your local recycle center can and can't do, we just don't know, right? And so I've always been pretty crazy about not heating plastic. I've talked to you many times about how I don't have any plastic accoutrement around coffee in the morning. I don't let my kids heat up their food in any plastic. I really try hard not to take the silverware that they give us. My sister-in-law is really good about traveling around with silverware. I don't do that. But I think it's a great idea.
Straws?
And straws.
Like
yeah, I do have travel straws that I take
Like
around.
my mom, I think, got for Christmas for you, like the glass straws. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
I got
look,
travel straws and travel silverware now that I keep in my car.
that's nice. Yeah, I just we live in Europe and there's not a lot of fast food, so I wasn't using it. And when you go to the mall in Europe, you get real silverware. There's not plastic silverware here. And real plates and real cups, and you put them in a tray and it all gets washed. It's not single use.
Every day when I walk on the beach with Grover in the morning and I take him on a walk, it really is upsetting to me because I see like the lids of all of this crap that I'm looking at here on the screen. I see little
Yeah.
pieces of this just washed up on the beach in a line, you know, after a storm, you know, just have like the line where there's like a fish, you know, like like a shell, a bunch of shells.
Yeah.
And then little pieces of plastic,
Yeah.
that they're just floating around in our system. That are, you know, fish are eating them. You know, 60 Minutes to that whole investigation where those birds' stomachs are
Oh
just
my God,
filled
that was
with plastics.
awful.
And we know that this stuff stays in it's never going away. And this industry has lied to us. This industry has lied to us. Big Oil specifically, that plastic would be recycled. So Frontline did an investigative piece. And NPR, they spent months digging into internal industry documents and interviewing top former officials. We found that the industry sold the public on an idea that it knew wouldn't work, that the majority of plastic could be and would be recycled, all the while making billions of dollars selling the world new plastic. The industry's awareness that recycling wouldn't keep plastic out of landfills and the environment dates to the program's earliest days, we found. There is serious doubt that recycling plastic can ever be made viable on an economic basis. One industry insider wrote in
I mean, think about-
1974.
What year was it that they buried all the ET games? Those weren't recycled.
No,
in
there.
in the mid 80s or whatever.
We did a story in the newsletter about how these Garfield phones were washing up on this from
Yeah.
a shipwreck in France.
Think about having-
Plastastic in the chat says, well, if you use water to wash out that guacamole tin, you're negating the effects of the recycling. What I do is I use a wash bin, is like keep a bowl in the sink and let that bowl collect with water while I'm washing other dishes. And then I use that sort of wastewater because I've had the same thought. I'm like, well, am I going to now waste resources to clean out something I'm trying to throw out? That's nonsensical too.
Right.
Or also we have a steam dryer which collects water. So I sometimes keep that water as well to like use for things because you can't really drink it and you shouldn't give it to your plants. But it's just like, this is a lot of thought for how to avoid these toxins in our environment and in our bodies. And the fact that Congress won't even make one little move about it, right? If we're really concerned about our health, we have to get boosters all the time, right? But we can eat as much sugar as we want and toxic food
That's
and
'cause-
single use. Like, there's no profit in that, right? There's profit in
That's
us
because
having...
there's only lobbyists for it, not against it.
Yeah. My sister-in-law has recently started a refill business in her hometown. It's called Kemerton Refill and Refresh. Check it out. And so what she does now is she gets products in big bins and you bring back your containers, whether they're plastic, glass, or whatever, and you fill it up every time you need new not Dawn soap, any dish soap or window cleaner or all-purpose cleaner or shampoo, conditioner, so that you don't have just one single-use bottle per use. And I think that it's brilliant. And a lot of these refill stores are popping up around We have to do something, you guys. There are now soaps and conditioners in a bar. You know, we can only shop around it so much, though. We should also demand that our lawmakers are on board, because this is an existential crisis facing everybody. What's happening to the planet? All life forms will be affected.
Don't you kind of find it funny that we actually, the people, are the biggest lobbyers of Congress? We send them more money than any of these lobbyists, yet they don't listen to us. They listen to these people who go in there and give them personally money, but like they take more of ours. It makes no sense. Like, they don't listen to the people that are giving them the most money. Like, we have these issues, but we can't lobby against the sugar lobby. We can't lobby against the plastic lobby. Like, how do we even do that? We can't.
Yeah. And
I
so
sort of
money.
can't believe it exists. You know, like, why should somebody lobby on behalf of things that are bad for us?
Well, there's a plastic industry lobbyists. I mean, that's amazing, right? And you have Dow Chemical, you have DuPont, you have Chevron, you have Exxon, who paid millions of dollars in putting out plastics ads for decades, you know, and they had this environmental message, you know, in these ads that they were putting out there, you know, in their lobbying and trade organizations that they were putting out. And they spent tens of millions of dollars on these television ads and ran them for years, promoting the benefits of plastics that they ended up being buried. They were burned, or in some cases wound up in the ocean. And only 10% of all plastics ever created have been recycled. 10%.
I'm shocked it's that high.
I know. I'm surprised too that it's even that high. But just think, either it's all dumped in landfills. And in fact, some of these groups, they ship it off to China. China's like, hey, we'll take it. So then they bury it there. And then we'll talk about an environmental disaster. Anyway, enough on this. I just can't stand when I walk along the beach and I see like this in the morning when I'm walking Grover, and this is in the sand. These like little pieces of plastic that just seagulls are eating them, you know, and it's just floating in our food system.
Yeah.
You know, just disgusting.
My dentist, I don't know if this is true or not, but our dentist said that if you're going to try and recycle your toothbrush, you have to cut the bristles off of it, because otherwise it'll just be thrown away. I was like, really? So you think that your
Why?
plastic toothbrush can be recycled, but for some reason it can't? But some of the sugar cane ones can, or they break down naturally. I don't know. It's so hard as a consumer, right? Because everything that's sold in Target is going to kill you.
That's why we need natural stuff. Right?
Well, and I had read somewhere that one of the reasons that it's so hard is because of the cost to actually recycle stuff is so high. And you have to think, like, if it's something like those toothbrushes, somebody has to individually touch every single one of those if that's the case.